The Nintendo Wii has got to be one of my favorite consoles of all time, and I don't think I'm alone in that sentiment. Seeing how this year the Wii officially turns 20 years old, I thought it only fitting to try to breathe some life to this otherwise old console. I found one sitting on eBay for around $20, listed for parts, so I thought, why not? I'll pick it up and see what I can do with it. However, this thing is disgusting. It is full of dust and grime, you name it, and I feel like I need to wash my hands every time I touch this thing. So, naturally, I went online to look for a reshell, and lo and behold, I saw a transparent case listed. So the Y2K kid came out in me, and I knew I had to make this video. And holy cow, on first glance, this case is awesome. With the Wii logo there and everything. Wow, it looks like glass. We've got the Nintendo logo too stamped in there. That's kind of cool. Alright, to get started with our teardown, first off, seeing this rusty screw in here, I'm a little nervous that's going to be a pain to get out. Hopefully it won't give us too much trouble, but we'll get it figured out. Also, it's always important to take your memory card out of your console before working on it. Just if there's any shorts or anything, it can damage your data on there. Got these black covers too on this white console. I thought it was funny coming from eBay like that. Also, I do not know what Nintendo was thinking in 2006 when they engineered this thing. There's a bajillion different screws and they're all a little bit different. You can see I'm taking the GameCube controller cover off there. Yeah, if you can keep good track of these screws and remember exactly where they go, it's gonna make life a lot easier when you go to put it back together. Here's the time clock battery. Now, a lot of the screws on the Wii are hiding under these little sticker covers, and I always forget which stickers I need to take off, so I always just end up taking off all of them. You can see there's even some under those rubber feet there. So funny enough, the Wii was released in 2006 for 250 bucks. I don't know what that is in today's money, but it seems like a way better deal than the Switch 2. Now when you're going to take off this faceplate, be careful, there's a little wire in there, and you can damage that real easy. There it goes. Yeah, this thing is gross. Holy cow. You can see I'm trying to scrape the rust out of the screw right there so I can get at it. I put a bigger bit in my screwdriver to get a little bit better of a bite on it. And there it goes. Actually ended up not being quite as hard as I thought. I'm wondering if somebody spilled water or something just on their desk underneath the Wii or something, and it just rusted out that one screw, so hopefully there's no water damage inside of this thing. Little bit of rust in there. Pretty gross, but it doesn't look too bad. Holy cow, look at that fan though. And this air filter here is probably one of the worst I've ever seen. Look at that 20 years of dust caked up on there. If you breathe that stuff in, you'll get a new variant of COVID. Lucky for us though, we're not going to be reusing that shell. Well, getting into the meat of it, usually everything on the inside of the Wii is all Phillips head. There's some tri-wing screws on the outside, but inside they start to become a little more uniform. Pulling the fan out there. Yeah, that thing is just disgusting. So hopefully we'll be able to clean that up really nice. before we put it back in the new shell. You can see here I'm taking off the Wi-Fi antenna. They had this thing running through pretty much the whole Wii. There's the other one. Now this piece here is just to help guide the air from the fan over those cooling fins. Now, there's actually quite a few pieces of shielding inside of the Wii. I'm not sure if they were worried about interference between things around the house and the Wii remote, but they certainly covered their bases. And this particular piece of shielding that I'm taking off right now, I think I have an idea for it when we go to put it back in the case. I'm not a huge fan of the idea of having that be the only thing that you can see through the clear case. So hopefully we can make some modifications and take better advantage of this crystal clear case that we've got. And I didn't show this either, but this disk drive is faulty, so we'll also have to replace that when we go to transfer everything over to the new case. It's important to be really careful too when you're pulling these disk drives out, because they're still going to be attached by, you can see me reaching for this ribbon cable underneath here. So you got to make sure all that's disconnected. There it is. So there should be two cables there. And they're both out. Easy. Now I think at this point this is probably common knowledge, but another fun fact for you. During the console's development, the Wii was actually nicknamed the Nintendo Revolution. So that's why all its model numbers, they start with RVL. And just a nice little nod to that fact. Now these little black trim pieces that you see here, these are also really important to keep track of. They're actually really difficult to get back into the Wii shell, so just pay close attention when you're pulling those out. When taking off this shielding too, keep in mind those ribbon cables are pretty delicate, so just be careful when you slide that shielding over those cables. That tin can be a little sharp and you don't want to damage anything. Now what I'm pulling off here is actually the Bluetooth module, and your Wii will not boot up without that. So a lot of those parts, consoles that you get off of eBay, sometimes if you're lucky it'll just be because that Bluetooth module is loose. So an easy fix there. There's the Wi-Fi module. Again, I'm relatively certain that your Wii won't boot without this at least installed. And there are those Wi-Fi antennas I was talking about earlier as well. There's people out there though, who are a lot smarter than I am, that have figured out how to actually patch that. So you can install some custom software and your Wii won't need that Bluetooth or Wi-Fi to boot up. And we finally got the motherboard out. It actually looks in decent shape, it's not too bad. Let's pull that big old heatsink off. That thermal paste looks okay. I should probably replace it, I just don't have any on hand right now. Here's even more of that shielding. I think I'm going to try to get away without putting this back in, just so you can see everything through the case there. Now turning our attention to the faceplate here. This is actually one of the more complicated parts of doing this reshell. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I can never figure out how to get these wires routed quite right to get things to fit back in here. So this is another one that you're going to want to pay really good attention to when you pull all this out. Also, the amount of dust in here is just insane. Look at that. With everything all taken apart now, it's time to give everything a good scrub down. This stuff is pretty gross and grimy, so getting things clean is going to make a huge difference. Typically, I just use an old toothbrush and some Dawn dish soap, and it tends to do a really good job of getting this stuff clean. Can't forget the heatsink there. A lot of dust gets trapped between those fins. Here's that health hazard of a air filter. It came out great. Now we got to get this stuff drying and we can break out some isopropyl alcohol here. Yeah, this thing is disgusting. A little bit of isopropyl alcohol in this cotton swab should do the trick. And there it is. Not without making a mess though. Take a look at that. It's always a good idea to give the motherboard a quick little rub down here. I like to focus around the edges where a lot of that dust has gotten into the Wii, but also pins and contacts, just making sure everything looks good. Around the edges of some of those ports that were pretty bad on this one. Breaking out the toothbrush now. This is a much better tool, I think, for getting inside some of these controller and memory card ports, inside the power there, just to make sure all those pins are clean and everything's making good contact. Can't forget the power and reset button either. Well, now that we're all cleaned up, we can start getting this thing back together in this new shell. Just getting some of that dust out before I set the motherboard down. I was a little nervous about it not fitting quite right without that shielding, but I think it's gonna go in fine. Also, do not forget to put these spacers on. That's what keeps the heatsink from crushing the CPU and GPU when you go to screw it down, so those are super important to get back in there. Got to get the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi module back in here, can't forget those. And then you've got to route these Wi-Fi antennas coming off that chip there as well through the shielding. Once that's in, you can get the ribbon cable and the plug for the disk drive up through the shielding. And then we can go ahead and get everything secured back down. I will say, I feel like reassembling the Wii is much more difficult than taking everything apart. There were several times I had to go back and look for the right screw, and I ended up putting the wrong one in a few times, so I had to swap it out and keep really good track of what was going on to be able to get everything to fit back together. Again, these black trim pieces can be a little fiddly as well. I'm not sure if it's just because I didn't have the bottom shielding underneath the motherboard there that made this part a little more difficult, but getting that to sit flat did take me a little bit of time there. These Wi-Fi antennas you see me routing here too ended up being probably the most difficult part of this entire build. I know I've said that a few times now, but this one I really had to mess with to get right. And here's that new disk drive. These are pretty cheap, you can get replacements. This one's not OEM, but it's been working pretty well so far. Getting the disk drive in isn't bad at all. If yours isn't working, it's a pretty simple repair to just get that far and do that. There's the vents going back on. When you do end up getting that routed though, don't forget to crimp those little metal tabs down. You can see me do that there. Next we got to figure out what to do with this top shielding. I'm thinking an angle grinder might do it. Yeah, there we go. At first inspection, the case didn't really want to seem to screw in quite right without this shielding here. You can see there's a few screw holes that need to fit down on top of that shielding, but I still wanted to be able to see that disk drive in there, so the angle grinder seemed like the best option here. Turning our attention back to this faceplate now. Now this part here took me a lot longer than I care to admit. Getting that wire routed around those pins there is relatively difficult. There's, again, just enough wire in here to make this sit like it should. And I ended up using the original black plastic pieces from the Wii and not the aftermarket parts, and that did seem to help a little bit. Now we just gotta line everything up and get that connector plugged back in, and we can start buttoning everything back up. Wow, first glance at the underside of this thing, it's already looking really, really cool. Don't forget to get the button cell battery back in there. And now for the moment of truth. Holy cow. This thing looks fantastic. I wasn't sure if cutting up that top shielding was gonna do very well, but I think it worked out perfectly. Look, you can see the disk drive, all the separate components in there. Man, very, very cool. Let's get some of these covers back on, and I think we should be about done. I've got to say, this thing turned out way better than I anticipated. This thing looks awesome. I'm very pleased with it. I think my favorite part is being able to see the disc still spin up when you insert them there. I wasn't sure how that was gonna turn out with me hacking up that bracket there, but I think it's kept the case pretty rigid, while still giving really good visibility into the inner workings of the Wii here, which I think is pretty slick. My only gripe about this reshell is these port covers, the ones that are always missing on every Wii that you find. They're a little warped, they're not quite flat. And I'm thinking I might try to take a heat gun or something to them and see if I can get them to lay flat again. But other than that, all the text is really nice and you know, stamped in some areas and printed on others. It just is a really good looking case otherwise. I did leave the rubber feet and stickers off it. I've got a hunch that I'm going to be getting into this thing again, especially to go back and replace that thermal paste that I neglected to put in there the first time. And also just some quality of life improvements. Leave me a comment down below and let me know if you guys would be interested in seeing an HDMI mod I know they make for these things, or even USB-C power would be really cool to have on one of these. I've done a couple Wii portables in the past as well, which is a lot of fun. Let me know too if that's something you guys would be interested in seeing on the channel here. But anyway, thank you for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time.